Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Some of you have figured out I'm a Simpsons fan, and there was an episode of The Simpsons where a new television show came out called Police Cops. And the star of Police Cops, the screen name was a guy named Homer Simpson. And of course, when that happened, Homer Simpson, the one we know and love who hangs out at the bar, got a bit of fame and thought that's really, really cool. And then they rewrote the character and made him into a doofus. And suddenly Homer was not so happy having the name Homer Simpson. Now, of course, that is in a comedy on television. What happens if you have a famous name in real life? And so there is, and this is a great story, and a lot of people sent this to me, thank you very much. All over the place, I've seen this, but the New York Post version. There's a lawyer named Mark Zuckerberg, who is not the guy who runs Facebook. And it's funny when you think about it at first, because this guy, I believe, is older than Mark Zuckerberg, who runs Facebook. So he's had the name longer. But of course, everyone knows Mark Zuckerberg as the guy who runs Facebook. So there's this poor lawyer who's got, I mean, poor in the sense of this has, it's happening to him, who has the name Mark Zuckerberg. And when he meets people who don't know him, their first thought is, no, you're not. As if there could only be one Mark Zuckerberg. And quite frankly, I don't think Zuckerberg is that rare of a name. So I can also tell you, my name, Steve Lehto, I know of several other Steve Lehtos around America. There is a Steve Lehto up in, I believe, Minnesota, who's a musician. There's another Steve Lehto who's a professor, I believe, of math in the Northwest. And there was also Steve Lehto who was an executive at, I believe, a company a food products company in the Midwest. And I've also told a story before about how I used to live someplace where there was a Steve Lehto with my exact name, first, middle, last, everything identical, but he was 10 years older than me, and he had a rap sheet about this long. And I had to have in the back of my mind, if you ever get pulled over by a police officer who asks to see your ID, as you hand it to him, say, please check the birth date. Because if he mistook me for the other guy, I would have probably been taken to jail for no other reason than the guy's rap sheet and whatever else is going on with him. So, a lawyer named Mark Zuckerberg has now had to sue Meta because they keep shutting down his account on Facebook, claiming he's impersonating the billionaire founder, Mark Zuckerberg. And you might say, but Steve, these lawyers are always suing people. There's more to this story. And he actually, I believe, has a very, very valid case. But we'll get there. The lawyer is in Indiana. His name is Mark Zuckerberg. He shares the name with the guy who started Facebook. And the social media platform has repeatedly shut down his personal and business profiles, claiming he was impersonating the founder. So he's filed a lawsuit. He's an Indianapolis bankruptcy lawyer, and he's battled mistaken identity issues on Facebook for 15 years because he shares a name with the founder. His verified personal account has been shut down 5 times. He's also paid $11,000 in advertising money to Meta, but his law firm's Facebook page was taken down in May for the 4th time. So he's even paid to put up ads, and they just take his thing down, but they got his money. So he said, normally you'd say, well, it's just Facebook. It's not a big deal. But this time it's affecting my bottom line because I was paying for advertising for my business to try and get clients. And I know a lot of attorneys who do use Facebook as a integral part of their advertising platform. It's how they reach the community. He says, so they took my money, but then after they took my money, they shut me down for what they say is impersonating a celebrity, not using a true name and violating community standards. But this is his true name. So it's the same message I get every time they shut me down. So Mark Zuckerberg filed his lawsuit Tuesday in Marion Superior Court, accusing Facebook's parent company of negligence and breach of contract for suspending his accounts for baseless and improper reasons. He said his Facebook page was first deactivated in 2010. He's an early adopter. And every time since, He's had to endure a painfully long appellate process, including submitting photos of himself, his driver's license, and his credit cards to prove he's a real person who hasn't violated the platform's policies and to get his accounts restored. He said, I think it's offensive that a company that is supposed to be so tech savvy in the world can't figure out how to flag my accounts and keep this from happening. So he has practiced bankruptcy law for 38 years. Okay, so he's been using this name in commerce for quite some time. So he says, it's like they're almost doing it on purpose, but I'm sure they're not, but it feels like it. So Meta was approached by the New York Post, and they said that it just received a lawsuit and they are reviewing it. We know there's more than one Mark Zuckerberg in the world, and we're getting to the bottom of this, they said, but would not answer any further questions. Company later told the Post that the other Mark Zuckerberg's account had been reactivated. So apparently they've now reactivated his account. They think that might help. We have reinstated Mark Zuckerberg's account after finding it had been disabled in error. We appreciate his continued patience on this issue and are working to try and prevent this from happening in the future, a spokesperson said. Now, Zuckerberg joked that sharing the name with the guy from Facebook has its perks, like getting a good table at a restaurant after making a reservation. It has also caused headaches in his personal life, calling the identity mix-up a thorn in my side. His law firm fields phone calls daily from Facebook users seeking help with their accounts, receives packages meant for the social media mogul, and in 2020 is mistakenly sued by the state of Washington for alleged financial exploitation. So how confused are you if you've got a problem with Facebook and you call a lawyer in Indiana who has the same name as Mark Zuckerberg and go, hey, I need help with my Facebook page? I think I'm actually talking to the real Mark Zuckerberg, right? Well, you are talking to a real Mark Zuckerberg. But the fact that the guy gets phone calls like that shows you some other issues with society at large. The repeated cases of mistaken identity prompted Zuckerberg to launch a website tracking those as well, yet he still relies on online platforms like Facebook to attract new clients and compete with other local legal practitioners also spending ad dollars on Facebook. And so he does bankruptcy work. I know guys who do bankruptcy work. A couple of different kinds of bankruptcy work you can do. You can handle those of big corporations, or you can handle the run-of-the-mill stuff of average, everyday people who need to file bankruptcy. And the trick to doing those is volume. And so it's often quite competitive, and there are several attorneys in almost any community doing this. And so the only way you can compete is by advertising heavily and doing them in volume. And so if this guy gets cut off from Facebook, which is where a lot of his competitors are, it would hurt his business. So he says, it's the fact that they're affecting my business now. My clients can't find me. So he adds that he wants Meta to refund his money and pay his attorney fees, among other demands. Now, the interesting thing is, I don't know if he's representing himself. It just says he's filed a lawsuit. So he's a named plaintiff. And generally speaking, you should never represent yourself to begin with. But I know a lot of attorneys who think, well, I'm an attorney, I can represent myself. And you may or may not be able to. There might be issues down the road. But one thing you have to remember is that a lot of courts, when awarding attorney fees, when you represent yourself, they'll say, well, you didn't hire an attorney. Couldn't have cost you anything. And if you make the argument, say, but my time is money. Well, it's not the same as if you hired somebody. It's not. And so I've seen courts just say, no, I won't award you attorney fees for work you did for yourself. So he says, I want an injunction. I want them to not do it again. I want Mark Zuckerberg to fly out here, hand me my check, shake my hand, and say, I'm sorry, but that's never going to happen. I think he's joking there. I don't think he actually expects Mark Zuckerberg to fly out and apologize and shake his hand. Okay? I don't think he's looking for that. I suspect they probably asked him jokingly, what would you like? And he said, I'd like $1 million in a ham sandwich. Okay. But the interesting thing is that right now, the legal department at Facebook should speak to somebody who knows what happens in all those tubes and wires behind those closed doors and those big closets with all the heat's coming out, and say, is there a way we can flag this guy's account so that he never gets shut down without a human double checking it? And somebody presumably would say, yeah, we can. We can put this double secret flag on it. Okay, let's do that. Then you approach him and say, we have solved your problem and we feel so strongly about it that we'll enter into a consent judgment that'll settle this case, or some kind of settlement that says that it won't happen again, and if it does, here's what will happen. And you could put something in there that's punitive, not $1 billion, but the point is that if you can make that happen. My concern is, and I'm just thinking out loud here, which is what I often do in front of this camera, is that they're going to say, we have so many users, so many employees, so many departments, so many times we tweak the algorithms and the program and all this, that we're not certain it'll never happen again. It very well could happen again. But they got to do something because this is a special case. The guy's name is Mark Zuckerberg, and he wants to advertise his law practice, which he does elsewhere, and even here, and he doesn't want to get kicked off by them saying, oh, now you're claiming to be Mark Zuckerberg. Not that one. So you can see how it happened. And again, I don't know how Facebook's inner operations work. I don't know. But you'd think that they could solve this one. But we'll see. So I hope there's a follow-up. If there is, I'll tell you. New York Post ran it. Anna Young is actually the author. Lawyer named Mark Zuckerberg sues Meta after repeated account shutdowns over claims that he's impersonating Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg. And he says it's offensive. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. When all else fails, read the instructions.